My name's Greg O'Rourke, and in this lesson you're going to learn how to improvise a great sounding jazz solo with just 5 notes. That's right, 5 notes. Is it possible? Yes. Yes, it is. Let's work out how to do it right after this. Okay guys, well I really hope you enjoyed today's session, and if you would like a PDF of everything that we're covering in today's session, you can get that at FretDojo.com/PDF. That's FretDojo.com/PDF, and you can get a printable example of all the exercises that we're going to today. A warm welcome to everyone that are watching me live, and to everyone on the replay, a warm welcome to you as well. Okay, so what inspired me to put this video together today? Well, the thing is, there's so much theory and overwhelming jargon when it comes to learning jazz guitar, but if you really break it down into the basic building blocks, there's not that much that you need to get under your fingers to just get started. You can avoid a lot of that theory and a lot of the complicated scales and arpeggios and just start making some great music right now. Alright, cool. So you can see that's my guitar there, but the exercises will come up on the screen here. So I'm sure you guys know this scale already. This is a D minor blues scale. The minor blues scale is one of the most common scales used everywhere, in whether it's rock or blues or jazz even. This is something that most of you guys should know like the back of your hand basically. But we will briefly revise this now for those of you that haven't learnt this scale yet. This is obviously more than 5 notes, but just bear with me. We need to do this first, and then we're going to break it down a little bit further. Okay, so here's the scale in question, starting on the 10th fret and moving through each string. And backwards. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. It's just the minor blues scale. So if you are watching the replay, maybe pause that and have a couple of goes of that scale. But this is the thing, when you solo with a whole scale pattern like that, I've found that when students do this, they tend to just play the scale up and down, okay? But there is a way to get around this, and this is by placing strict limits on the material practicing. So let me show you how to do that now. If we go back to this minor blues scale, let's just go to this diagram now. What I'm going to do is let's just extract 5 notes out of this scale pattern, okay? So we're going to ignore all those notes that are in grey. We're just going to focus on these 5 notes, okay? So you'll find that it feels like there's hardly anything there to use, but just check this out. So we'll play this through first, starting with the 3rd finger on the red note, the D on the 12th fret. And then we'll go up 4 notes, up to that flat 5 note, and then back down, going to the low note, and then finishing. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so that's 5 notes out of the scale pattern, right? So how are we going to turn this into a solo? Well, you'll find that because there's not much there, your brain will be more creative. That's what's kind of ironic about learning jazz, is actually the more material that you learn, superficially anyway, you'll feel like you've kind of overburdened by all the stuff that you're learning. But if you just break it down into these very small chunks, you'll find that your brain actually has a chance to be more creative with the material. And this is really the doorway to opening up the path to more secure soloing in jazz. So let me demonstrate that to you now. So here we go, a solo with 5 notes. All right, so I'll start the backing track, and let's see what that sounds like when I just sort of doodle around with these 5 notes for a minute. Okay, so as you can see, it's actually sounding pretty cool. Now, you might sort of think to yourself, well, how can you possibly use pentatonics or blues scales for jazz, because it's too simple. But that's the thing. The simple things are actually often the most useful things in jazz. That's what Joe Pass actually said when it comes to jazz playing is, if you think complex, you actually can't play very complex. Ironically, if you have simple structures, then you can play more complex and more creatively because you've got a sort of a more simple framework to work within. Now, it's not just a case of kind of playing this scale up and down, because that is boring, right? So even this little fragment, it's good to start to think when you're doing this exercise in terms of playing in motives and ideas. Okay, so let's go back to the guitar now, and I'll kind of run you through the process of how to do that. Now, know that you can do this with any idea, whether it's a lick or an arpeggio or a scale or whatever. The principle is the same. Okay, so let's go back to this now, and let's have a look at this fragment once again. So, obviously, playing it up and down, pretty boring, really. Now, but little motives and ideas, like for example, this was a little idea that I had at the start of that solo I played for you before. It's very simple. It's just 3 notes. But if you think in terms of motives, you can start to kind of grow a solo out of this motivic material. Okay, so I could just repeat that a couple of times, but what I like to do when I play a solo is kind of grow the solo. So here we go, we've got, and then the next statement I make could be simply adding a note to that. See, I just added that extra note, the 11, from the scale on the end of that motive. And then I could add another note. Okay, I could play that motive that I just played before backwards. So that's kind of the reverse. I could play the longer form backwards. And then maybe put an extra note down. Okay, so all the great composers basically have done this process. Like whether I'm thinking more of classical guys. Guys like Brahms or Bach or Mozart, guys like that. They always had these very strong motives that they would then embellish and grow when in their composition. Now you do the exact same process when you're soloing in jazz. It's just that you're more doing it spontaneously. And actually, those guys could do it spontaneously in the earlier days of classical music. It's just that tradition was kind of lost. But in jazz, we get to do this more in a spontaneous way in the context along with the band. So listen to this again. I'm going to play another solo in this vein. Let's go back to a close-up once again. But this time, I'm going to add just a few notes around this nucleus idea. Okay, so it's not like I'm just going to use 5 notes now. I'm going to add a few more either side. So maybe a few more of these notes from the minor blues scale. But my nucleus idea is still on this these 5 notes, okay? And I'm going to really think in terms of motives and like how can I do a motive development in the solo. Now, when you solo with motives, it brings a good sense of unity to your improvisation. It's not just like you're playing these random notes or random ideas. It actually starts to make sense, almost as if you're making sense when you're speaking a conversation with someone. Okay, so let's have another go of that solo, and then we'll talk a bit more after that. Listen out for those motives. Okay, cool. So at the forefront of my mind then I was really thinking in terms of motives, okay? So really getting the sense of the material that you first play is often a really nice way to start a solo. So you've made this statement and then it becomes more fun actually because you're not scrambling around for ideas. You can kind of just bounce off what you've already played and it's much easier. And then as you can see, it's not like there was a lot of different color in that solo. It was mainly just the minor blues, but because of the strong motives, it still had a lot of interest. So in summary, there we have it. So a nice, efficient way to just get started with jazz guitar soloing. Jazz doesn't need to be hard to sound good, and you don't need a large vocabulary in order to still make a great sounding solo. You can make great music right now with what you have. So just by limiting your material to a small amount. Okay, so that's might be all we have time for today. I really hope you enjoyed today's session. And once again, if you would like a PDF of this material, just go to FretDojo.com/PDF and you can get all the downloads, the chord progression for the backing track and that pentatonic scale pattern and all that sort of stuff so you can get into it. So until next time, guys, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Fret Dojo. Bye for now.